Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to demystify the complex and honestly kind of fascinating legal framework of local governance. The structures dictating our everyday lives aren't just boring bureaucracy. They're actually incredible pieces of legal machinery. Let's get right into it.
Think about your neighborhood for a second. Who really holds the power? I mean, from the super mundane stuff like filling potholes, all the way to monumental challenges like fighting climate change, your local government actually does way more than you might think. We always look to national capitals for leadership, right? But the truth is, the biggest, most direct impact on your daily life happens right in your own backyard.
To map out all this machinery, here is our agenda. 1. The birth of local governments. 2. The powers that be. 3. Keeping officials in check. And 4. Local action, global impact.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, Birth of Local Governments, Building the Foundation. It all starts with one core idea: decentralization. This is essentially the legal recognition that local communities actually know what's best for themselves. So the national government intentionally passes power down. This creates self-reliant communities that can step up and become highly effective partners. It's literally about putting the decision-making power right next to the people who are actually affected by those decisions.
But, you can't just draw a line in the dirt and declare a brand new town. Creating a local government unit, or LGU, requires strict, verifiable proof of viability. They need proven income, a sufficient population, and a clearly defined land area. But the absolute trump card here? That last point, the plebiscite. The citizens who are directly affected have the ultimate say through a majority vote. No vote, no town.
Now, there is a really unique exception when it comes to autonomous regions. In areas like Muslim Mindanao and the Cordilleras, the law recognizes regions sharing a very distinct historical and cultural heritage, so they get a specialized autonomous status to honor that heritage. Though it's worth noting, the president does still maintain general supervision just to ensure the laws are being faithfully executed.
Okay, moving right along to Section 2, the powers that be, the muscle of the LGU.
So what's the most sweeping authority they have? It's called the General Welfare Clause. Through this, LGUs exercise what's known as police power. This gives them the legal authority to enact ordinances protecting everything from public health to a balanced ecology. It's basically the legal muscle that allows a town council to, say, zone a super noisy factory far away from a quiet residential neighborhood.
And then there's eminent domain, the power to take private land for public use. But check out this surprising detail. If an LGU urgently needs that land, they can actually take immediate possession by depositing just 15% of the fair market value. It's a pretty fascinating balancing act. It ensures crucial public works aren't stalled by endless lawsuits, while still, initiating that payout for the landowner.
This elegantly illustrates how local powers balance progress with public convenience. Permanently closing a public road, that is no casual decision. It requires a heavy supermajority, an ordinance proved by at least 2/3 of all Sangguniang members. And on top of that, they are legally mandated to provide an adequate substitute facility. They literally can't just cut off your commute without a solid backup plan.
Of course, to run a government, you need money, and LGUs absolutely have the power to create their own revenue sources. But the law acts as a pretty powerful shield for citizens here. If there's ever any ambiguity in interpreting a local tax ordinance, the doubt is construed strictly against the local government and liberally in favor of you, the taxpayer. Though, quick warning, if you are the one claiming a tax exemption, the rules flip and are strictly interpreted against you.
All right, Section 3, Keeping Officials in Check, the leash on local power. Because local governments are absolutely not above the law. As corporate bodies, they can sue, sure, but they can also be sued. They aren't magically exempt from liability if their negligence causes injury or property damage. Plus, a mayor can't just independently sign contracts on a whim. Without prior authorization from the Sangguniang, those rogue acts are considered ultra-virus, basically beyond their legal power, and they are entirely void. So what happens when two neighboring LGUs fight over territory? Well, the law enforces a really strict de-escalation approach. First, they must attempt an amicable settlement. Just try to talk it out. If that fails, the dispute goes to their respective Sangguniangs to hash it out politically. Only as an absolute last resort does jurisdiction fall to the regional trial court.
Now, to maintain a stable government during a crisis, the law relies on strict, almost mathematical rules of succession. If a mayor permanently vacates their office, there is absolutely no power vacuum. Power immediately transfers to the vice mayor. If they're unavailable, it drops sequentially down to the highest-ranking Sangguniang member, which is determined strictly by the proportion of votes they obtained in the last election.
But what if the official is perfectly healthy, doing their job, but the public just completely loses confidence in their leadership? Well, the people possess the dramatic, direct power of recall. You don't just have to sit around waiting for the next election. A recall can be initiated by a petition signed by just 25% of the total registered voters in that LGU. It's a huge mechanism of direct democracy, making sure officials remain constantly accountable to their constituents.
Also, to prevent political monopolies and the entrenchment of power, the law firmly applies the rule of threes. Local officials are strictly limited to 3-year terms, and they cannot serve for more than 3 consecutive terms in the same position. After term number 3, they have to step aside, forcing fresh leadership and new ideas into the system.
Finally, Section 4. Local Action, Global Impact, the Global Stage. To really understand how your local town impacts the world, we have to look at the doctrine of incorporation. This is a constitutional principle stating that generally accepted principles of international law automatically become the law of the land. So broad international goals for peace or equality, they aren't just lofty UN ideals, they are legally binding domestic mandates.
And because of this doctrine, global governance increasingly relies heavily on decentralized political units. Massive international treaties regarding human rights or the protection of biodiversity, they actually rely on your local neighborhood government for grassroots enforcement. Whether it's a binding hard law treaty or a soft law declaration, the rubber absolutely meets the road at the local level. The national government might sign the treaty, but the local government is the one enforcing it.
In practice, this means your LGU legally shares the responsibility with the national government for maintaining ecological balance right in your backyard. But it actually goes even further. LGUs are empowered to bypass the national bottleneck and directly negotiate financial grants from foreign assistance agencies. It creates a direct link between your local town hall and international economic cooperation, provided, of course, that national security isn't compromised. So, as we wrap up this explainer, we've seen the incredible legal machinery that builds, empowers, limits, and connects your local government to the whole world. So you really have to ask yourself, look closely at the leadership in your neighborhood. Are they truly utilizing this immense, decentralized power to not only improve your daily life, but to change the world? Thanks for joining me to decode the complex, fascinating world of local governance. Keep asking questions and keep learning.